Am I the jerk for fixing a problem so my cousin could bake a cake? My family has a tradition of spending the week of Memorial Day together on a vacation property that is jointly owned by several family members. It includes a day-long picnic and cookout that involves 8 to 20 family members. While discussing logistics, my cousin Jessie, who is 22 years old, announced that she was going to bake a cake. Immediately, our Aunt Beatrice, who is 73 years old, became insistent that Jessie should not make this cake. Beatrice argued that Jessie would have to bake it the day before, but there wasn't anywhere to store it. She shot down any and all ideas from Jessie and her mother, Marie, who is 51 years old. When I, a 38-year-old woman, spoke to Jessie later, she confided in me that she felt stupid for buying the cake ingredients already because she knew Beatrice would find an excuse to stop her from making it. She really wanted to contribute this year because, despite being an adult with a full-time job, everyone still treated her like she was a child who couldn't be trusted to do anything. She wanted to prove them wrong. I reminded her that Beatrice's concerns were about the lack of safe food storage, not about trust in Jessie's abilities, but she wasn't convinced. To be honest, I thought Beatrice's arguments were flimsy at best. However, as a preteen and teen, I spent a few summers with Beatrice's family to attend a cool summer camp with my cousin Connor, who was born the same year as me. During this time, I came to resent Beatrice. It was like she would say no to us with no reason, basically just so we'd know she's the boss. For example, at breakfast, she'd ask what I wanted to drink, only to insist I needed to drink something else. If I asked for milk, she would say no and that I had to have orange juice. If I asked for orange juice, she would say no and that I had to have milk. She would do this with everything. It was especially annoying when it came to activities. Anyway, I am an adult now, and I'm able to admit my view of her is definitely biased, so I didn't say anything to Jessie about it. Instead, I looked at the problem, the tiny countertop. I realized that while there was limited horizontal space, there was plenty of vertical space, especially over the snack bowl area, which wasn't big enough to serve as a prep area anyway. That gave me an idea. The next morning I measured twice and went out to find a pantry stand. The stand would allow stuff to go under it and give a little shelf to put things above. I found one that fit over the snack bowl, showed it to Marie when I got back, and got her permission to set it up. Jessie was then able to bake her cake. Beatrice was not pleased by this development, sulking and rolling her eyes whenever the cake was mentioned. Several cousins have since accused me of being an asshole because it wasn't my place to fix the space issue, as it wasn't really the problem, and I should have known she didn't actually want me to fix it. I maintain that Beatrice shouldn't have lied about what the problem was to begin with. For context, Marie and Beatrice both own part of the vacation property. They were the only owners on site at the time. You are not the one to blame. You saw a problem, you solved it, and everyone benefited except Beatrice, who was more interested in maintaining control than enjoying the family gathering. You enabled a cake to happen, made your cousin feel a bit better, and Beatrice had to eat her own objections for once. Justice was quite literally served. It sounds like the family is just whining about it not being your place because they know Beatrice is going to be insufferable for a month now. Am I the jerk for not confronting my parent about an alleged dark family secret? Apologies for the lack of detail, as I really want to keep it as private as possible. I know it sounds like a made-up story, and I obviously cannot provide any proof, but please believe me. My parents had me at a very young age, and my mother had a very traumatic delivery. It all messed with her head a little, and it was tough growing up with her, but now we have an amazing relationship. My parents cut ties with their families before I was born and moved to another state a few years after, so I did not have any grandparents or other relatives growing up. Recently, I received a message from my alleged aunt, who somehow tracked me down online. She claimed that she was my mother's sister and provided some proof. She asked me about my twin brother, which left me puzzled since I am their only child. I asked her to elaborate, and it turns out my mother had twins, but when we were toddlers, my twin passed away in a tragic accident. My parents for some reason decided to completely wipe his memory out of our lives, and even moved to another state to have a fresh start. I know how crazy it all sounds, and I still cannot completely believe it. Maybe it is just a cruel prank. I thanked her for all that and explained I would need time to think it all over. I decided not to bring it up with my mother. If it is not true, it would mean the cruel prank actually worked, and if it is, it would traumatize her again. I do not want to know what motivated her to do it, and I am content with the life I have now. I am in an amazing school, and I have a loving and caring fiancé. I finally built a great relationship with my mother and father, and I do not really need anything else. So in a few days I responded to my aunt and thanked her for the information again. She asked me if I talked to my mother about my twin. I told her no, and that I do not plan on doing that. She asked me why, and here is where I might be an asshole. I told her that it was not her business to stick her nose in. She told me that it was her business too, since I am her family as well, and I said that she was not my family and I did not have any interest in talking to her whatsoever. I am content with the life I have, but a part of me is left wondering whether I should have brought this up with my parents or if I did the right thing by sweeping it under the rug. I think it's okay if you never bring it up, but it's also okay if you ask your mom about it someday if you want to. Bringing it up with your mom can't bring a twin back or change anything that has happened, and people cope and grieve in different ways. Your mom likely moved to another state to get away from your aunt and start fresh, and your busybody aunt just can't let it go. Honestly, blocking your aunt might be the best move here. Am I the jerk for telling my partner that their parent essentially suggested that I should break up with them? So my boyfriend's mother texted me asking if I could go to her house to cut her hair, which I've done in the past. I haven't really seen her often because my boyfriend and I tried to keep as much space between her and us as we can due to drama in the past. I was a bit nervous to go over by myself, but I figured I'm giving her a haircut. What's the big deal? I'm just going to do that and leave. I asked my boyfriend Chad if he would come with me because I was nervous to go by myself in case I got cornered into any questions. Chad said it's been such a long time and his mother loves me so much that he would really like for me to go there and bond with her. I agreed that was a good idea, so I made time to go and do the haircut. That same day we were having a refrigerator delivered, so we had to make sure somebody was home for the delivery. Chad said he would be, so it was fine for me to go and do the haircut in the morning. When I got to his mother's house, I started the haircut, and the people delivering the refrigerator were calling me to say they were outside, but nobody was opening my door. I was calling Chad to get the door, but he had fallen back asleep. His mother witnessed me calling him and realizing he wasn't answering the phone. Then it began. She said, "Look, I'm going to be hard on you now. What are you doing with him? How long are you going to put up with somebody like this? He is not a good person. I have prayed for him and I realize that he has a bad soul. I know you think he has money, but it won't be for long. I am changing my will." She was insinuating I'm a gold digger. She continued, "This is the man you want to marry? This is who you want to be the father of your child?" I continued to cut her hair and just answered with questions like, "What length would you like? And do you want a lot of volume?" I kind of ignored the comments. Chad did end up answering and getting the delivery fixed, by the way. In that moment, I felt uncomfortable and felt like it wasn't her place to be speaking to me like that. I have to admit it wasn't the first time, but it was never that aggressive. It was subliminally in other ways insinuating that we shouldn't be together. Back to the big question. Am I the asshole for telling my boyfriend that his mother pretty much told me to leave him and that he was not a good person? Because that's exactly what I did when I got home. I told him what happened and he was so upset. He reached out to her and mentioned the entire story. Now she has called me and texted me paragraphs saying it was a woman-to-woman conversation and how dare I mention it. Part of me feels like I broke a girl code, but another part of me feels like it was important for me to tell him that I didn't like those comments and it made me upset. So now, it's all up in the air. I'm not sure what's next. Probably want to have a relationship with her, but it's too soon to say. I would just like to know, am I the asshole in this situation? You are not the bad guy in this situation. The point here is that everyone is all about the bro or girl code when it covers for their shitty behavior. All you did was tell him that his own mother was talking about him behind his back. If you care about him, that should make you happy that I don't keep secrets from him. In the process, she accused you of being a gold digger, and yet she thinks this deserves your respect and protection? Am I the jerk for calling the police on my nephew after he stole from me and squatted in my house? I am in a difficult situation with my nephew and my family, and I need some perspective as I simply feel terrible about this whole situation. Last year, my nephew lost his job and couldn't afford to stay with his friends anymore. Having helped raise him and having such a deep connection, I decided to help him out. I had recently bought a house over the summer to rent out, so I let him stay there until he could get back on his feet. I also gave him $3,000 to help with living expenses. A few months later, he landed a job at a major tech firm. During Thanksgiving, he bragged that his starting salary was almost as much as I had been making after 10 years in my current job. I was naturally very enthused for him and extremely proud. I decided after the holidays it was time for him to move on and get a place and start paying rent. As spring rolled around, I urged him to find another place to live or start paying me. I also told him we could forget the $3,000 and just move on. He refused, getting really upset and saying it was convenient for him to stay since it was close to his new job and that he was not in a financial situation to be paying rent right now. This confused me, as he was previously bragging about his salary. I then offered to let him rent the property for a little more than the mortgage, which was less than what I planned to charge other tenants. He refused and has barely spoken to me since. My family insisted that I give him a 30-day notice to vacate the property, which I had notarized. He ignored it. I then started to talk about eviction. We got into another argument when I got to repainting the house with notice, because he had scuffed up the walls. He kicked over my paint cans, ruining the carpet. I had no choice but to file for eviction. It was all simply too straining. I had some valuables and furniture I had stored in the crawl space I'd been too afraid to move due to the tension. I found that he sold my retro games and consoles, 2 paintings, my dining set, and a few other things through a camera on my property. I called the police to file a report. He came home during this completely out of his mind. They found ketamine in his system and paraphernalia, and he is now facing jail time for the possession, but also driving under the influence. My family is now furious with me, blaming me for ruining his life. His parents won't talk to me, and they claim I knew he was high when I called the police when he hadn't even come home yet. They said I should have called them before the police to settle it. I feel like I did everything I could to help him until he crossed too many lines. I just am so stressed and guilt-ridden, and I need to hear some opinions. You handled things appropriately. You went above and beyond to support your nephew, offering him a place to stay and money to get back on his feet. Despite your generosity, he took advantage of you, refused to pay rent, and even sold your things. Calling the police was 100% understandable, and his future legal troubles are the result of his own actions, not yours. Don't let your family make you think otherwise. Am I the jerk for leaving a family reunion early because of my cousin's unannounced pet? My husband's family has some annual reunions, and this year it was hosted at his aunt's large rural property. Everyone was excited because it's a big event where we all catch up, play games, and enjoy each other's company. One of his cousins recently got a dog, which she adores and brings everywhere. However, no one mentioned that there would be a dog coming to the reunion. I have a severe dog allergy. When I arrived at the reunion and saw the dog running around, I started feeling anxious. I approached her and gently reminded her about my allergy, hoping she would understand and maybe keep the dog in a separate area. Instead, she got defensive because she didn't remember I had an allergy, but then she told me she would keep the dog away. This obviously didn't happen. The dog was running around. I tried to participate in the activities, but within an hour I was already sneezing and my eyes were itching terribly. I couldn't take it anymore and told my husband I had to leave. He was sympathetic but suggested I should try to stick it out. When I insisted on leaving, some of his family members overheard and gave me a hard time for overreacting and ruining the fun. I drove back home feeling frustrated and left out. I left my husband there, and a family member would drive him home. Later, I received a series of texts from his aunt accusing me of being dramatic and saying that my departure made everyone uncomfortable. Some other family members echoed her sentiments, saying I should have just taken allergy medicine and stayed. My husband was also frustrated because he felt caught in the middle. He wasn't supportive of my decision to leave early and made it clear that he was disappointed. He thought I should have tried harder to manage my allergies and stay for the sake of family unity. His lack of understanding added to my stress and made me feel even more isolated. However, a few of his family members understood my situation and said I did the right thing by prioritizing my health. Now, I'm conflicted because I hate the idea of causing family tension and having this awkward situation with my husband, but I also feel like my concerns were valid. So, am I the asshole for leaving the family reunion early because of my cousin's unannounced pet? Why stick around at a party when you're sick, miserable, and suffering? Your husband's lack of care and consideration for you was appalling, and ultimately he'd rather you be unhappy than his family be unhappy. It's not fair to expect someone to just manage their allergies like a secret superhero. People need to be more considerate and ensure a comfortable environment for everyone instead of making unrealistic demands. Am I the jerk for kicking out someone my friend wanted to set me up with? I'm really not a person who brings things to the internet, but I just really want opinions from people who don't know the people involved. I have a friend named Jess. I've known Jess for a couple of years through another friend. We're all in the same group of 7 friends. For the past year, Jess has been trying to convince me to date, even though I have no interest in it. My ex was the only person I've ever dated, and I never had any interest in dating or relationships before or since. We also share a child together, and being a parent is demanding enough. Jess is always inviting me to dinner parties and trying to set me up with guests. She suggests people I should go out with, and it drives me up the wall. She is well-meaning and a hopeless romantic who wants me to be happy. I get that, but she won't let up no matter how many times I tell her to leave it. On Saturday, I hosted a small gathering at my home. My ex was also at the party since we have mutual friends. There were fewer than 20 people total. I saw Jess arrive with someone and thought it was a date. It was random, since I hadn't actually said +1s were welcome, but whatever. When Jess came over and introduced her date, it turned out to be another man she wanted me to meet. I was not surprised, but still extremely annoyed. I organized this evening to just hang out with my friends, and here Jess goes again, doing the thing that I asked her not to do, and that she knows causes me stress. It just felt so obnoxious of her to disregard my expressed feelings in my own home. I told Jess that she and her friend had to go. I apologized to him, but said Jess had brought him here under false pretenses, and due to her behavior, she was no longer welcome in my home, so he wasn't either. Jess was taken aback and started apologizing. Eventually, my ex came over and told her to leave, at which point she started crying. Everyone saw what happened and tried to defuse the situation, but I wanted her gone and she left. Since then, Jess has reached out to apologize but also said I overreacted and used her typical excuse of wanting me to be happy. No one has spoken to me about it directly, but I know from my ex that a couple of our friends think I was harsh to kick her out. I get that it was dramatic, but I really feel I was justified. I just want some third-party perspective on whether I went overboard before I approach a conversation with Jess. You are not at fault here. Jess is projecting what she wants onto you and disregarding what you've specifically told her, which makes her a bad friend. The fact that she invited a guy to your house without informing you is incredibly disrespectful, especially since you're a parent. Her actions show that she cares more about forcing you into something you don't want than respecting your boundaries and your happiness. Thanks for watching. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications so you never miss a video. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist in the description.